Is the shooter in Texas a neo-Nazi? Let me start by saying this is a perfectly valid, legitimate question to ask, because when someone is accused of being a neo-Nazi, there needs to be absolute proof of that before we make the assumption that it is true. Right now, the mainstream media is accusing Mauricio Garcia, who is the absolutely horrendous, evil man who murdered 8 people in Allen, Texas, of being a neo-Nazi. They say he has white supremacist sympathies, but the source of this accusation is unnamed, quote-unquote, law enforcement sources. So we don't have any proof that this is true. They've provided no evidence to substantiate this claim, and they won't even name the person who told them that this shooter has white supremacist tendencies. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. We have literally no idea. But there are some more important questions about this shooting that need to be asked, and the left right now is using this empty accusation that, oh, he has neo-Nazi sympathies, he's a white supremacist, to avoid answering the other questions that need to be asked. The horrible, evil man who murdered 8 people in Allen, Texas. His name is Mauricio Garcia. You can see a picture of him on the screen. You know my policy. I do not withhold from you a picture of the shooter. I do not withhold from you the name of the shooter like some other outlets do, because I'm not here to be the gatekeeper. You can decide whether you want to see this and hear this. I want to report to you what the facts are, and then I want to talk with you and analyze these situations with you and not decide what you are responsible enough to hear or what you're not responsible enough to hear. None of that. So that's the shooter, Mauricio Garcia. As you can see, it's a Hispanic man, which, believe it or not, is critical to the analysis of this story, because almost immediately after this happened, this man opened fire in a mall, an outlet mall in Texas, killed 8 people, including some children. Almost immediately, the left did 2 things. Of course, they started with their gun control talk. That's expected. They always try to capitalize on tragedies to coerce people when people's emotions are heightened into accepting the left's pre-existing political agendas when it comes to our Second Amendment. That's gross and ineffective and dangerous, but expected. But the second thing that they did is they branded this man as a neo-Nazi sympathizer. They said, according to law enforcement sources, Mauricio Garcia had white supremacist sympathies or a white supremacist ideology. Again, this is a valid question. I'm not sitting here saying he wasn't a white supremacist. I'm not saying that he didn't have neo-Nazi tendencies. I have no idea. I have literally no idea, just like everyone else has no idea. We don't know the facts yet. If he did, we absolutely should analyze, well, how did he get into that ideology? And what led him to embrace such poisonous rhetoric that he would use it to harm other people? We should know exactly what his ideology is, just like we should know what's in the manifesto of the Nashville mass shooter. We absolutely should know exactly what these people believed to try to unpack why they committed these mass atrocities so that we could possibly prevent such atrocities from happening in the future. All that being said, we don't know if he was a neo-Nazi or a white supremacist because these unnamed law enforcement officers or sources, meaning if they don't want to go on the record, there's a reason why they don't want to go on the record. They're either fake or their evidence isn't solid. They provide, by the way, no evidence. Not social media posts, not tattoos, not comments that he's made to his family, nothing. We get no evidence. We're just supposed to take the mainstream media's word for it based on an unnamed source. I'm sorry, the mainstream media has not acted in a way worthy of our trust that would convince me to take their word for it without them providing hard evidence. You show me the hard evidence, you put the sources on record, or else I'm not going to assume that this killer was acting according to an ideology which you have used to brand unfairly used, falsely used to brand every political opponent to the Democratic Party, right? That's the thing, of course, right? The mainstream media wants this man to be a neo-Nazi sympathizer. They want this man to adhere to white supremacist ideology because they've spent the last, since 2015, that's the last 8 years, labeling every conservative, every Republican, and every person that voted for Trump as a white supremacist neo-Nazi sympathizer. It's grotesque because it's not true, but they want this killer to be a white supremacist neo-Nazi sympathizer because then they can say, oh, well, he was probably radicalized by Trump, right? He's probably radicalized by those Republicans. Republicans are no better than this guy who brutally murdered 8 people at a mall in Texas. Texas, of all places. The mainstream media wants this to be the case. That's why they're labeling him when we don't have really much of any information about him yet. They're labeling him as a neo-Nazi white supremacist because they know that'll stick in the minds of the American people, regardless of what other information comes out about him in the days to come. And by doing that, they've already associated him in the minds of the American public with their false allegations against us. If this sounds evil, it's because that's exactly what it is. They're taking an act of evil and they're trying to associate it with people they don't like politically. And that in and of itself is evil too. So we do have a photograph of his hand. I mean, this is a picture of him after he's been killed. There was an off-duty police officer or a police officer who was responding to another call nearby who ended up responding to the 911 calls that were coming from this mall when the shooting was taking place. He went over to the mall and he tracked down and killed this murderer. I can't even express my gratitude and my admiration for the heroism of this police officer who stopped what could have been an even worse tragedy than it already is. But after this killer had been killed by the police officer, his body was laying on the ground and his hand was outstretched. I am going to show you this. It doesn't show his face. It doesn't show his wounds. So it is just his hand on the ground. But look at the back of his hand here. You see this tattoo on the back of his hand. There's some speculation. I know it's a very blurry photo because it was taken from quite a far distance away. But there's some speculation that this might be some kind of gang tattoo. It will be interesting in the days to come to see whether that's true, to see what his affiliation was with any kind of gang or with any kind of ideology. Like I said, he could be a neo-Nazi sympathizer. We don't know yet. It seems a little unlikely to me that he would be a neo-Nazi sympathizer, given the fact that he is a Hispanic man. You saw the picture of him. I know on his mugshot, on the information below his mugshot, it says that his race is white, but you saw him. He's clearly a Hispanic man. There are a lot of people online who are even saying, well, he looks like a black man. Well, regardless, you can be black and Hispanic, you can be white and Hispanic. He clearly is of Hispanic descent here. It'd be a little weird to me. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me that someone of Hispanic origin would be a white supremacist. That seems really contradictory. But like I said, we'll have to wait and see here. It will be interesting to see what his tattoos tell us and whether the police try to hide this. The other reason that the mainstream media and the left are obsessing about this, as of yet, baseless allegation that he is a neo-Nazi sympathizer is because there are a lot of other questions that should be asked when a murder like this occurs. Especially a shooting, not just a murder, but a mass shooting. When a mass shooting occurs, there are many other questions that we should immediately ask about the killer. I don't even want to call him the suspected killer. We know that this guy was the murderer. And he's dead now, so it's not like he's going to face trial. But some of the other questions that need to be asked that the left does not want to ask because they'd rather just blame the gun. They'd rather just blame Trump and white supremacy. The other questions are, well, what was the mental health history of this individual? Did he suffer serious mental health issues, especially, bipolar disorder and schizophrenia? And if so, what medication was he on? Was he on some of the black box psychiatric drugs that if you read on the label, the warning labels, some of the side effects include homicidal ideation.
Hi guys, it's Liz Wheeler. Don't forget to watch my show, The Liz Wheeler Show, every night at 7 p.m. on the First TV. You can download the free First TV app, or you can visit thefirsttv.com/Liz and start watching today.